Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man who I inadvertently sent down a rabbit hole regarding the Kerberos saga. We'll be getting to that in a few weeks. Good brother Monarch.
To be fair, I was already at least familiar with the concept of the Kerberos saga. I just hadn't seen anything beyond Wolf Brigade.
Yeah. Which is which is fair. It's just that there's a lot more, much like with Lodos, there's a lot more to it than people think there is.
But yes, today though, we're gonna start by talking about nuns killing things.
Yep. Due
Probably
to
demons, if I remember right. I don't remember.
Yeah, and it is highly apropos given that a certain hack is trying to do the whole, oh, the demons are just misunderstood. No, fuck them. Look, there's places where you can do that kind of thing, but when you have a setting that already has it where that's not, where you can't really do that, where you don't have that set up, don't try and force it in when it doesn't belong. Like imagine spending a couple movies about how villainous Pazuzu is in The Exorcist, and then doing a follow-up trying to go that he was just misunderstood. Doesn't work. And you are going to get shown your ass when you try that. But that is another matter entirely. One that I'll probably end up getting to either later this month or next month. For now, we have a bit of a double header, covering the Quickstart for Sisterhood by the Menzies brothers, and later on covering Fighting Heart's Overdrive by Rooster Emma, whose work is no stranger to this monastery. But now, Sisterhood recently finished its crowdfunding on BackerKit and managed to do pretty well for itself, if I'd say. In fact, let me check how it did. So they were asking for about £10,000. They got 61.5 thousand.
I mean, people want their murderous nuns. What can I say?
Mm-hmm. And this was a fitting team to do this concept, given that, as I've mentioned in the past, my first introduction to parable games was Shiver, which was very much in the classic horror setup. That they covering some of the expansions to that as well. Their dip into gothic horror, and then they're dipped into found footage with Don't Play This Game, which was a solo RPG that they did a while back that kind of dipped into the found footage phenomenon of the late 90s and early 2000s. Your Blair Witch projects and the like. A genre that a lot of people have tried to dip into, and very few have actually succeeded.
I could imagine that just seems like a very hard thing if you wanted to try to make a TTRPG out of that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I could see the difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And when I think of found footage films that actually were somewhat successful, outside of Blair Witch, and the original Blair Witch, I should note, I'd say the first Paranormal Activity and Chronicle. Of course, Chronicle's a whole other kettle of fish because of all the shit that went down with its director Josh Trank, who, suffice to say, because of his attitude, he's probably never going to get major work again, especially after Fan 4 Stick. But regardless, getting back onto the subject matter. Obviously the quick start's about 29 pages, though obviously we're not going to be covering all of the pages since some of the stuff we will have to skim. Especially the whole Lost Convent mission within it. But what we have depicted with Sisterhood is essentially an order of nuns that are dealing with preventing the apocalypse at post-World War II. And after
I can't be the only one who saw the picture on page 4 and immediately thought of that as Seamus, right?
It's the hair. I mean, these days Seamus isn't as brightly orange when it comes to his hair. It's more natural red, which is a darker shade than the carrot looking setup that he had for years. But obviously, since the game is dealing with this organization, everyone's playing a nun in some form. The GM is referred to as the Mother Superior, though I'm going to keep using the term GM to keep things consistent. But after going into the whole what is a role-playing game and what is Sisterhood, we have overcoming challenges. Now, when you have to roll dice to find out what happens, that's called a dice challenge, or a DC. Any action you take will align with one of your attributes and the dice size that is attached to it, determining what dice you will roll. The 4 attributes are faith, spiritual power, resolve in the face of evil, determines your spirit's health. Cunning, logical thought and deduction, investigation of a mystery, decoding ciphers and dead languages, stealth and ranged combat. Empathy, emotional connections, empathy and the ability to charm, coerce, and deceive others, so your diplomancer stat. And fortitude, physical strength, resilience to damage, and overall athleticism determines your body's health. The type of challenge and its difficulty will determine what dice you roll against. So essentially, each setup is a die versus die affair. In the cases of draws, characters performing the actions always win. And when it comes to the approach is you'd use one of the die sizes based on the attribute, and the GM is going to use a die size to represent difficulty. D4 is trivial, D6 is normal, D8 is difficult, D10 is testing, D12 is hardcore, and D20 is apocalyptic. Though some challenges might be a flat check instead of a dice. Though in those sort of situations, it's usually just the highest number on whatever the die would have been otherwise, it seems.
Yeah. But after that, we've got the help a sister out, adding dice.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the challenge is difficult to overcome and assistance is required. You can... excuse me. There are a couple of ways to add more dice when rolling. Here are your options. Assistance from another sister. Offering to help another sister with her challenge is what the Sisterhood is about. Outside of combat at the Mother Superior's digression, this allows the assisting sister to roll a d4 and add it to the main result. And certain skills, relics, and blessings can also add dice of different sizes to a roll.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get the blessings and curses. Gaining the upper hand or being dealt a bad one can be crucial to surviving an encounter with the demonic forces allying against you. If you are blessed, you will roll the next die size up from the attribute. If you are cursed, you will roll the size down. These effects can stack on top of one another and also cancel each other out. So we're dealing with something along the lines of Banes and Boons here.
Yeah.
Except instead of adding dice, you're adjusting die size.
Mm-hmm.
I like this because I've always preferred that to advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah, I don't mind. The funny thing is, I'm not a big fan of advantage and disadvantage in the world's most litigious role-playing game, but I did like it in Emberwind. And I can tell you what the difference is. In Emberwind, it doesn't stop at 1. If you get advantage from multiple sources, they count. I think that's the deciding factor, which does lead me to wonder what happens if say you've got a D20 in a given stat and you are blessed or you get blessed past D20. Put a pin in that in case that's not addressed here.
Yeah, if it's not addressed here, I'm sure it will be when the full rule set gets released.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, next up we have health, body, and spirit. Fighting against evil is going to be a tough job. See, injury can be dealt not just to your physical being, but also your soul. Health, therefore, is tracked 2 ways. Body determines your physical, spirit determines the health of your eternal soul. To restore the body, healing items such as bandages, painkillers, and salves can all help to restore it, as can minor relics with restorative properties. Physical rest can also restore the body. This can happen in between stories when there is a long moment of respite over multiple days. Roll a d8. I think that's a d8. It looks a little blurred on my side.
Mm-hmm.
And restore that much to your body. And for spirit, the spirit is a trickier thing to recover. Rest, meditation, and prayer can all be of help here, but only to a small degree. This can happen in between stories when there is a long moment of respite over multiple days. Roll a d6 to restore that much spirit. Certain relics may also be able to restore spirit as well, but their presence in the world is rare. Defeating specific enemies and bringing threats to a satisfying close can also restore spirit as hope returns to you.
Mm-hmm.
I do hope they'll give us a bit more later on about what constitutes a story.
I have my guesses, but yeah, some clarification will be appreciated.
Then we get facing death. If you lose all of your body or spirit points, you will collapse in the area you currently are in and begin to fight for your life. Death, the most elusive of the horsemen, appears in the distance and appears to approach. At the start of your turn when fighting for your life, you will roll against death. If you lose all of your body points, you will roll fortitude. If you lose all of your spirit, you will roll faith. Death starts with a d6. If you win the roll-off, you stay alive, but the die size for death increases by 1 step. Each turn, you roll again. If you fail, you die.
Mm-hmm.
Another sister or ally can attempt to help you. They must roll their cunning against death's current die size. If the sister wins, you are restored to 1 body or spirit point, but remains unconscious and cannot perform actions. If you are healed further through skills or items, you will regain consciousness and rejoin the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I like that. That seems both fair and slightly terrifying to deal with.
Yeah. Which, given that this is a very horror-adjacent affair, would certainly fit. But then we have Divinity, which I guess could be considered the extra effort system within this game. Uh, every sister has 3 divinity at level 1 and gains more as they level up. This can be spent in several ways to turn the tide in your favor. Divine Intervention. Spending 1 divinity allows you to roll a d6 and add it to the main result. Other sisters cannot spend divinity to help another sister's dice roll, which makes sense because that would be doubling down. The specific skills. Certain powerful skills require the use of divinity. Dice of Divinity. A sacrifice to be made by all the sisters in times of need. The group of sisters can decide to spend 1 divinity each to replace a main die with a d20. This has to be a unanimous decision, needing all the sisters' faith behind it for it to be rolled. Use it wisely. And some relics and unique weapons require divinity in order to be used. As far as recovering, you can recover from through rest. That's a d4. You can spend actions to recharge divinity through a simple prayer. See page 14, we'll get to that later. And engaging with your past and using it to your advantage can recharge divinity. Then we have skills, which is going to be skimmed past because within this quick start, there's 4 pre-gens that have a set of skills to mess around with. The full version will have a full array of skills, but that's another story. Which brings us directly into combat. Combat is represented by the way of the cross and pentagram that you see on page 10 here. This is a visual way to represent any battlefield you may find yourselves in throughout your stories and communicates the tactics you're employing to everyone at the table, including the GM. And the way of the cross, using tokens or markers to represent your sister, you place yourself upon the cross and move around it as your position and tactics change. Each section of this cross represents a different area/tactic being employed on the battlefield. Certain abilities, relics, and weapons work better in different sections of the cross, so make sure to look at how your sister is built and the tools at their disposal. This is opposite the pentagram, which is where the enemy side of things. Think of the cross and the pentagram as 2 sides of a brutal firefight. The cross is where the sisters have dominance and are the strongest, and the pentagram is the same for the enemy. With these 2 sides combined, you have a tactical map of any battle you encounter while playing Sisterhood. When the sisters cross over into the pentagram, they take the fight to the enemy. They will be cursed on every roll they make. This is the same for the enemy if they step into the cross. Knowing when to push your assault forward or hunker down can be the key to survival. Different enemies will target other areas of the cross and try to move the sisters around to disrupt their tactic and thwart their attacks. You should do the same. Then we have cross sections as well. And this sort of abstract approach I actually don't mind, since this is clearly a very crunch light game. Not full on rules light. This isn't a story game, but I always appreciate when you have games that don't rely on either theater of the mind or full on grid combat. And this is kind of using grid, quote unquote, but in a very zone-based way, which I think helps gets the point across.
At the very least, I'll say I like the idea. Mm-hmm. I'd want to actually see how this would play out, but we do have a full adventure later that'd probably help showcase that. We won't be going into it, but I'm gonna say I kind of like this little setup, if only for the flavor. I like the 2 different ways the cross and pentagram grids are set up. And I think once you get the hang of it, this is probably a pretty easy map to use.
Yeah. And we do have a few notes regarding the different sections. Brawl is obviously where melee weapons are going to be most useful. Flank is, well, flanking. A successful attack can get one of the following options: +1 damage, reposition target to adjacent section, or curse target for the next round. After you make an attack in flank, you have to place yourself in brawl or near. Near is good for melee weapons with a longer reach and ranged weapons with a shorter spread. Vantage is the high ground, and when making an attack from each round you're in vantage point, you can either gain a blessing on attacks, or enemies who attack you are cursed for this round. And long is long-range fighters. Reinforce is an area of high defense. This provides extra defense in a safer spot to administer healing and support. Attacks made against you while in that area are cursed. And hidden. To enter hidden, you have to roll a cunning challenge against the enemy with the highest cunning dice size. If successful, you enter hidden. While in there, you can't be attacked, and you can do a number of actions. Reposition into an adjacent section, or attack from hidden. If you do so, you are blessed and have +1 damage. Once you have attacked, you have to reposition into an adjacent section that is not brawl. If another enemy enters the same hidden section, or a skill is used to try and spot you successfully, you will be revealed, and you have to be repositioned into brawl or lose an action. Then there's safety, way in the back of both. It takes a reposition action to move to safety from reinforce. While in safety, you can't be attacked. You can use another reposition action to flee the battlefield. Once you've fled, you can't come back. And terrain, which is not a section you can go in, but it's something to be aware of. Basically, how the terrain can make things riskier or not. And some of these are carried over into the pentagram version of the chart, but there's two that are unique to the pentagram side. Ritual, which requires certain types of enemies being in the ritual area in order to use certain powers, and Dark Blessing. One of the horsemen can provide, or a powerful demon can provide a blessing to their cult, which modifies the battlefield in their favor. And looking back at the pentagram and the cross diagram, I'm going to zoom in for this. So you all can. So on the cross we have near in the middle, long and vantage in the back, reinforce in the far back, and then safety. Then above that closer to the front, we have flank and brawl, then hidden. Then you have the same kind of hidden, then flank and brawl, then near and ritual in the middle, then vantage close to the back as well as long, and then reinforce all the way back. Because of the way it's set up, it almost carries the implication that it's built to have the enemies outnumber you. But it is starting to take shape how it's supposed to be used. And getting back to the heart of the matter, then we get to actions in combat. You have 3 actions you can use during a round. Some of these actions are reserved for their combat turn, but some can be activated on another sister's turn. So we have reposition, which is move from one zone to another. Attack, which is self-explanatory. I don't think I need to explain what attacking is in a combat-heavy RPG. That being said, you can make multiple attacks, but each time you do, you step your die down. So there is an advantage to having a high die at the start, because you would get a better shot at multiple attacks, but it's not something you can rely on. And if I'm being honest, I find this a bit more interesting than the progressive penalty with multiple attacks that you'd see in some D20 based systems. Because a -5 penalty on a D20 for another attack is a bit steep. I think that's why the multiple attack penalty, the way it was in like 3rd edition, didn't exactly stick.
Yeah, the 25% swing in your odds was not fun.
Whereas this one, it just means that the cap goes down by 2, which is certainly a significant blow, but because of the fact that you're not dealing with a static defense all the time, it's not as harsh of a blow as it may look. But then
we have assist next, which we kind of covered earlier.
Yep. The only thing to add here is just keep position in mind. See, use, which is just using an item. Escape, self-explanatory. Pray, which uses all of your actions and either uses simple prayer to reduce to recharge divinity, or another from the Sisterhood prayer book. For a simple prayer, roll your faith die and restore divinity points and or spirit equal to your result. If not in reinforce, enemies will be blessed on their attacks against you until your next turn. So best not to do these kind of prayers right in the thick of it.
Yeah. But after that, we have the drop. So before we start combat, we have to decide who gets a drop on who. In some situations, it is clear which side has the drop. Maybe the sisters snuck up on the cultists as they seek to perform a ritual, or the sisters are ambushed while they sleep. Otherwise, both sides roll their highest cunning dice available from any sister or enemy that is about to be in play. The highest roll wins, meaning they have the drop on the other side. This allows them to use 3 actions with any unit before combat starts. They will also choose their first unit to activate and have their turn. After the drop, and the first actions are concluded, control will pass to the other side, who will activate 1 character on their side. This continues to alternate until all the sisters have been activated. If the enemy side outnumbers the sisters, they may activate all of their unactivated units in a horde phase to bring the combat round to a close. Any units in the horde phase will only have 2 actions on their activation as they scrabble to keep up with the ever-changing battlefield. You know, I kind of like that. I can't think of a system that's done something quite like that before. With the horde phase. Keeps being overwhelmed by enemies, both kind of scary and doable in this system. But it's not having to keep track of like a full set of actions for each individual at that point.
Yeah. It also makes swarm encounters much less of a pain. But then we have finishing a combat, which is self-explanatory, and then prayers. Now we already covered the basic prayer and how that works. And there, but each of the pre-gens that we have here is going to have their own unique prayer in addition to the simple one. But then we have weapons. And each of the pre-gens is going to have their own set of weapons, but the basic one is just fists. Uses fortitude for its attacks, deals 1 damage. This can be body, spirit, or both. Range is 0. i.e., you'd have to be in the same zone. The old 1-2, if as it's special, if you land your first attack, you may make another immediately without using an action. And when it comes to ranges, range 0, you have to be in the same section as mentioned before. Range 1 and adjacent. Range 2, two sections away. Range 3, 3 sections away. Range 4, 4 sections away. Range 5, 5 sections away. And the examples they give are for 0, close quarters weapons, so knuckle dusters, knives, and your mitts. Range 1 would be things like spears, halberds, and staffs. Range 2 would be shotgun. Range 3 would be pistol. Range 4 would be rifles, bows, and long barrels. And range 5 would be sniper rifles and scope weaponry. Wonder what range a rocket launcher would be.
I'd say it vary, but 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. And then it goes into how enemies work, which is going to be the name of it, the size of it, its affiliation, how many body points it has, so how much damage it can take. Its die sizes for the 4 main attributes, and any attacks or skills that it has. And after that, it goes into the sample adventure, The Lost Convent. I want to see if it shows a layout for the cross and pentagram. It does not, but we do have a few examples of the character sheet. And in some games, I'm iffy about one-page character sheets. This is a game that's simple enough where you could get away with that.
We do see some examples of your additional prayer other than just a single on each character sheet.
Yeah.
Which is nice. We get a bit of an insight into that.
And it does appear that skills in this case are skills in say the Mega 10 RPG or the like, because they're not really it's not really in the same sense as what people usually think with skills. What skills seem to be here is akin to class features or just special abilities. And there is the past skill that grants a passive bonus to certain things, but even then, like looking at the level 1 skills, those would be features in other games. But I do appreciate that there's a heavy emphasis on tactics with the kit that you have here. Like, for example, look at what we have with the shotgun. It's range 3, and it does 4 bit, but it does, if you go in point blank, it's 4 damage instead of 2. And if you go in point blank, you can make them roll fortitude with a target of 8. If they fail, you can reposition them. Okay, I don't know what happened with the second one where the resolution got fucked up, but nothing I can do about that.
So what I'll say, I would like to see a bit more, but this is the quick start.
Mm-hmm.
I like the very interesting combat grid. I don't think we've come across anything quite like this. There was that one kind of Bloodborne-inspired game.
Hollows.
Yeah. Where you're all kind of circled around an enemy with its grid is the closest thing I can think of, but it's not a very accurate comparison.
Yeah.
But I like these unique and original ways to handle the battle grid.
Mm-hmm. The big takeaway from this sort of thing is that combat in RPGs does not have to be handled in the same way as certain litigious RPGs that got their start in the 70s. Nor do we have to go through.
I'm always going to love my grid-based combat. I'm always going to have a spot in my heart for that, but I like having these two.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy my fair share of grid-based combat, but I'm also aware of the fact that some styles of play and some styles of game will not be properly suited to that. And that's just a fact you have to deal with. Some games will handle it well, and some will not. And some games really wouldn't be suited for it. Like imagine doing something like Exalted with grid combat, or even something that's trying to do the vehicular fights that you'd see in Mad Max. Imagine trying to do that in a standard grid. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, can it be done? Yeah, I guess. Can it be done with any elegance? No. And I've seen people try. It's just something that has to be abstracted. But that brings us to the other half, what made this an emergency double feature for the first time that I've done this. We are going from Nuns with Guns to fighting games with Fighting Hearts Overdrive. Now this one is about 37 pages, but it's even lighter on text, because it's doing the text style in a way similar to like Blades in the Dark or some of the PBTA games. Even though this isn't a PBTA game. Now, technically speaking, this is still in beta, but it hasn't been touched in quite a while. Which is why the table of contents is blank, which normally that would annoy me. In this kind of game, when it's only a few pages long, it's not going to bug me as much.
Yeah.
But it describes itself as... Good?
I was going to say, this opening, this is a weird one, because I'm at the very least intrigued how you'd even go about this. It is a hybrid role-playing board game that can be played in two different modes, Scenario and Tournament. Yes, we are still talking about a tabletop RPG. We have Scenario mode. This mode combines 1 versus 1 fighting rules with shared storytelling and focuses on story rather than competitive play. It is entirely possible to lose all fights and still create an experience and engaging narrative. In fact, winning all fights can lead to a bad ending. Okay. This mode is designed for a group of 4 to 6 players and takes approximately 3 to 4 hours to play. Multiple scenarios may also be connected together to play a longer story. This is known as a campaign. Then we have Tournament mode. This mode is purely technical and competitive and removes all storytelling. Here, the only thing that matters is victory against your opponents. This mode is designed for tournaments involving 8 players and may take a variable amount of time depending on the organizators'
I would like to take this time to point out English is not his first language.
Yes. I thought I was having a stroke for a second there.
Yep.
Okay. Organizer. I actually really like that as a word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
we have drive ranks.
yeah. Scenarios and tournaments must be associated with a drive rank, 1, 2, or 3. This determines the overall strength and complexity of the characters that can be created, and consequently makes the play experience more challenging. Whoever proposes to play is responsible for clearly communicating the drive rank. On the other hand, all participants are expected to follow the rules and create characters that fulfill those requirements. And training matches, which are just single matches between two fighters as a way to basically lab the game. Then we have the match. The standard fighting match involves exactly 2 fighters and lasts a maximum of 6 rounds. Each round of a match consists of an input phase, a pressure phase, a resolution phase, and an end phase. Fighters normally begin the first round of the match with no pressure, but some rules and effects may change this. So first we have the input phase. Both fighters secretly choose their input for the current round. This is always represented by 2 6-sided dice. One representing speed and the other representing the command you wish to perform. It's suggested to have two different colors or sizes to represent speed and command. Then the pressure phase. Both fighters reveal their input and suffer pressure equal to the cost of their chosen command. This pressure is suffered even if you're later unable to resolve your command. See next phase. So that means if a fighter reveals a 5 for speed and a 4 for command, and that command has a cost of input plus 1, then that fighter will suffer a total of 10 pressure. Which does make me wonder why a D6, but we'll probably get to that soon. Then the resolution. The combination of the 2 fighters' chosen commands determines what happens. So attack plus attack, only the attack with the highest speed is resolved, can combo. If there is a tie, only the attack with the lowest command is resolved, can combo. However, command 4 is treated as being lower than command 1. If the tie persists, no command is resolved. That's an odd distinction to make. Attack plus block, only the block is resolved. Attack plus dash, only the attack is resolved, both can combo. Block plus block, no command is resolved. Block plus dash, only the dash is resolved, can combo. Dash plus dash, then no command is resolved. Resolving means that the entirety of the command's effects take place in the precise order instructed by the text. Then end phase. The round ends. Any effects that refer to the end of the phase must be applied now. When the 6th round ends, the match concludes and the fighter with the least amount of damage is the winner. It also ends if a fighter suffers enough damage to match their damage limit. In that case, the fighter is knocked out. Which I see where things are going. I'm a bit perplexed about input and pressure. I think I see what it's trying to do, but let me check something with the pre-gens that were involved in this. So actually there was only okay that, looking back at the sample character that they get that was in the package, there are 6 commands, each one to a different die size. So that would explain the whole input and command combination setup. Which does lead to a bit of risk reward, a bit of reading the opponent. But then we have key concepts. The first concept is combo. After you resolve a command that lists any attack commands in its combo section, you may immediately resolve one of those attack commands by suffering pressure equal to its cost. You may keep the combo going by resolving commands up to a maximum of 3 resolved commands in the same round. That includes your initial command for that round. Then commands are the actions a fighter can take. Each command is tied to a number and used in combination with the command die. Of course, the command die is self-explanatory. Then cost. Commands always have a cost, listed as a number input, or input plus minus a certain value. Input is the total of a fighter's speed die and command die during a given round. The cost of commands causes fighters to gain pressure during the pressure phase. Let's see, damage is self-explanatory, and damage limit, also self-explanatory. Then we have extra, which is just an add-on, but the total is still considered a single source. Input is speed plus command. And overdrive is referred to as a secret technique that can turn the tide of a match. Fighters will have a variable number of overdrives depending on the scenario or tournament, and each overdrive remains hidden until first used. But then we have pressure, which represents stress and exertion. You normally suffer pressure when performing attack commands and reduce it when dashing, but it may also be suffered or recovered due to a variety of effects. If you accumulate pressure beyond their pressure limit, or when it's equal to or higher, then you instead suffer a equal amount of damage. Although if pressure is equal to damage to pressure limit, would you still end up suffering damage? Because I could see that being a lot of damage.
I guess it kind of comes down to how easy it is to finally hit your pressure limit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I imagine with a 6-round limit to each of these fights, I'm going to say I think, just at a glance of some of the characters down below, it's probably reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, then resolving is self-explanatory, and the speed die we've already covered. But then we get to creation. First, imagining the design, which is a step that can be skipped for the purposes of what we do here. Then choosing one of the styles, which determines your command options as well as influences your choice of overdrives. Then with overdrives, you pick a number of overdrives based on the scenario or tournament you will take place in. At drive 1, you choose one overdrive from the list granted to your style. At drive 2, you choose one from style plus one from the list of universal. At 3, you choose 2 overdrives from your style and one from the universal list. As a special rule, mix-up style fighters treat all overdrives, including universal ones, as part of their list. Overdrives are kept hidden and revealed only when you first make use of them in a given scenario or tournament. And then you record your limits. Damage limit is provided by your style and can be modified by overdrives. Your pressure limit is normally 20 unless modified by overdrives.
Then we get to the actual styles.
Mm-hmm.
We start with Bait and Punish. It revolves around blocking enemy attacks and countering in force.
Mm-hmm.
We get a list of attack commands here.
Yep.
cost, whether you can combo.
There and bait and punish's damage limit is 18. The heavy fighter style is built around simple combos and high damage attacks. And since combo has an associated die, I want to go back and check something with how combo was described. So it says, after you resolve a command that lists any attack commands in its combo section, you may immediately resolve one of those commands by suffering pressure equal to the cost. So, for example, Taunting Strike. After you resolve that, you can immediately combo into another Taunting Strike. Then with Uppercut, you can resolve that into Short Range Bash, and or Stomp. And Heavy's damage limit is 22. Then we have Hit and Run, which is, it says, the style features good combo potential and can recover from large amounts of pressure. And its damage limit is 18. And then we have Mix Up, which, as mentioned before, has access to all overdrives. It's a simple setup, but it's far more customizable than others. And then Rushdown, which anyone who's played a fighting game should know about Rushdown. Which has a damage limit of 20. And then Zoner. So, another one you're going to be familiar with if you've played a fighting game. What's also interesting is that 5 and 6 on the action dice are the block and dash commands. But Zoner has a damage limit of 18. And then we get to overdrives. Now, when you choose overdrives for your fighter, you must do so in accordance with the rules stated. We already went over that. Overdrives have no effect until revealed. Prior to that, it's as if you didn't have them. To use an overdrive, reveal it when indicated by the text of the overdrive itself. See the Reveal Trigger section. Revealing an overdrive is always optional unless otherwise stated by its text. Once an overdrive has been revealed, its effect will continue to apply for the rest of the scenario or tournament, and you must inform your opponents of it. So after that, we do have the Universal Overdrive list, which the fact that they have to be triggered by something specific does answer the question of why don't you just reveal all overdrives you have. But these aren't really uber attacks, as the name might imply. They're more of escalations.
Yeah. It's also, I was thinking the reason you wouldn't reveal your overdrives immediately is just so your opponent doesn't really know what's about to come at them from the overdrive. Because if you know their overdrives too going into it, it's going to be a lot easier to set up a counter strategy to them or plan out your moves. It also gives you some reason to maybe not use an overdrive in an earlier match if you think you've got it won. Don't reveal your cards when you don't have to.
Yep. But it also looks like each of the fighting styles has 3 overdrives that they can pick from. With Mix-Up being the exception to the rule. why it doesn't have its own specific overdrives, because all the universal ones are treated as its own.
I'm not sure how to talk about my thoughts on this one. I think if you're going to do a tabletop fighting game as close as you can to it feeling like a fighting game, I think they're on the right track here. But there's a weird disconnect in my mind that I'm like, who would want to play this?
For me, this. I know it's talked about being a role playing board game hybrid, but as much as I hate to use this wording when I've heard it, the role playing part of this feels very optional. I see where the mechanics are going, and I think the only thing that raises an eyebrow for me is the way pressure works. Because I'm not quite sure what pressure is trying to accomplish. I get the whole risk reward thing with the 2 dice, but I think my issue is why it is present. Like, it's pressure because it feels like pressure is mainly there to keep people from getting too aggressive, but something about it doesn't feel right to me.
I look at it as basically punishing an overplay like in an actual fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a problem with it as presented here. It's just I'm still on the point of I don't know who would want to play this. It's not that any of the systems are bad, or that I've found some kind of major hole in it. I'm sure if I really dug down, I could probably start nitpicking some stuff, but I can't envision myself sitting down and playing a fighting game in tabletop form where it's this close to a fighting game.
Huh. And I'll be honest, I really hate when I've seen some people remark, the game doesn't have enough role playing mechanics. I really do not like that line of thinking. That being said, what I see out of this comes across more like a bidding style game rather than a game that's really using dice in that sense. Especially since it's going to be this is something that it's going to be very tricky to do in a virtual tabletop, for instance, because of the whole secret setup. You could probably do it in like Tabletop Simulator easy, but in something like Roll20 or Foundry, that might be a bit trickier. I see potential with some aspects of it, but I think one of the big things is if it's ever continued onward, I think it needs a bit more time in the oven.
Yeah,
because there's not a whole for what it's trying to do. If there's not a whole lot of the customization begins and ends with overdrives, and I really think that this needs more styles as opposed to the amount of styles that it currently has.
Like, I think you said it was still in the beta, so I'm not gonna really harp on it too much for that.
Yeah.
I'd imagine more would start to come into play as time went on.
Mm-hmm. Like I see the foundation here. I just think that it really boils down to a bidding game more than anything else. And I'm not saying the idea of a fighting game in TTRPG form is a doomed idea. I've seen it work. I've run it, and it works. But this has more in common with Yomi, which doesn't claim to have any board gaming elements, than it does with say the Street Fighter RPG or Fight or Turbo, which are fighting game RPGs. Even Musha Shugyo, which is pretty minimal when it comes to the role playing elements that it does have by somewhat design. But even that has more to it than this. If I were to pick this up and run with it myself, I think one of the main things I do is instead of a list of set commands, have a command list that you slot stuff into. You know, sort of like the move slotting that you'd see in like Virtua Quest or God Hand or the like. I know those aren't that Virtua Quest barely counts as a fighting game and God Hand is not a fighting game, but those are the things that come to mind. And of course, when it comes to Overdrive being one of the main bits of customization, I would keep that, but there's one concept that's been a thing in fighting games in 2D fighting games especially for the longest time that I don't see here. We don't have an equivalent of a super bar. I don't think pressure counts.
Originally, I thought that's what overdrives were going to be until we actually got to the overdrives.
Yeah. I feel like overdrives feel like what transformations are in some of the DBZ fighters, you know, like the Budokai series.
Yeah.
But even that's not entirely accurate because with those games, you're slowly that transformation is draining ki, and you can build up ki at any point. I think the issue is when it comes to the gameplay loop is not closed enough. I really think that there should be some sort of risk. If pressure is going to be one of the main mechanics, I think there should be some sort of risk reward thing. Like maybe you do damage at high pressure, but you also take damage if you overextend it. You know, just something to better integrate it, so that it's not just a stamina meter in all but name.
I could see that. Again, I'm just sitting here trying to think of what I would want out of this kind of game. Like, how would I build it? But I'm at a loss because I really just can't put my head in the place of someone who'd want this. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm not saying this doesn't have an audience. I've just got this weird disconnect to this game in my head. I have no real reaction to any of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's a case of I see where it was going, but it very much needed some more time to cook. Though there is the possibility that maybe there was a writing oneself into a corner situation. I don't know. I just know that there's potential, but that potential isn't fully realized. Though I will note as a bit of an aside, I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I had at one point considered doing a fighting games month, the series of reviews that are themed around fighting game RPGs. And one of the things that spurred me on to do that is the fact that I've over the last few years discovered that the fighting games the Street Fighter TTRPG is still getting love in the fan side of things through the Warrior's Fist fanzine over there, which is still doing stuff. Which is surprising because the Street Fighter RPG has been out of print for decades at least. It was a White Wolf thing, and White Wolf isn't really around like that anymore. But I'd say with Sisterhood, there's a lot to like with that, and I look forward to seeing how that shakes out from the Menzies brothers. And with Fighting Hearts Overdrive, it's an idea, but one that's severely undercooked, which sometimes you get when you're dealing with designers. But I'd say that is going to wrap it up for this particular endeavor. We will be back with a non-double feature next week as we begin our journey into Megalos. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Soy, yo la cuna, yo,